The intellectual groundwork for the New Left was already in place by the late 1950s. It had been put in place by this group of scholars called the Frankfurt School. Okay, the Frankfurt School is a group of scholars. They're associated originally with a thing called the Institute for Social Research, which was in Frankfurt at the Goethe University. But they, they ultimately, because of the rise of Hitler, migrate to the United States. Okay, all right. Now, who are these scholars? Who are these intellectuals? Well, one thing to keep in mind about them, like the New Left, right? They often disagree with each other. They don't always get along with each other, right? But they share some common, framework of thought, right? So, no, first thing is, yeah, they are. Marx is one of their most important inspirations. The other one would be Freud. They're really looking at Freud, and this group comes into existence in the 1920s in Germany. If we remember something about the 1920s in Germany, it's chaos, right? And there's these fights in the streets between the communists and these like paramilitary groups. The Nazis are one of these paramilitary groups. There's this chaos, but the Communist Party is active. And the Communist Party is associated with the Bolshevik Party out in Russia, and they want to bring the Bolshevik revolution everywhere in the world, right? Okay, well, the Bolsheviks are intolerant, right? They're one type of way of interpreting Marx, and they don't tolerate dissent, right? Like, remember, before the Russian Revolution, there were Mensheviks and there were Bolsheviks. There were different types of socialists, okay, right? Different types of ways of interpreting Marx. Are you a Menshevik? Are you a Bolshevik? Okay, well, the Bolsheviks won out in Russia, okay? And they're trying to spread everywhere in the world, and they're sending out contacts trying to spread the Bolshevik revolution. So the Communist Party in Germany in the 1920s is pushing the Bolshevik agenda, and they don't tolerate any kind of dissent from the propaganda, from the party line, right? And so these intellectuals at the Frankfurt School, they're intellectuals, right? They're not going to be told what to say, so they're going to run into conflict here with these Bolshevik people. And so they don't have ties. They're not associated with the Communist Party, even though they're both kind of on the left, associated with Marx, right? Now, what are they? What are some of the elements here of the Frankfurt School? All right, they're looking for ways to implement Marxist ideas, in particular, kind of materialist socialism, okay, in the West. All right, and they're saying, maybe this whole like political economic thing, that's not maybe the most effective way to pursue the kind of change that we really want. Maybe we need to go after the culture and the society, okay? And some of them identified Christianity as the biggest blockage to the advancement of socialist materialism in Europe, okay? So there are some of them that have explicitly identify Christianity as something they have to get around, all right? Now, a lot of them have to leave Germany because they are Jewish. So you've probably heard talk of the cultural Marxists at the Frankfurt School, okay, and a conspiracy to bring down Western civilization. We have to be careful with that language, right? Why? Because a lot of them are Jewish refugees trying to escape from Hitler, and they're not, again, completely unified, right? They don't have one agenda. So it's not quite fair to say it's a conspiracy, right? And of course, that language is language very similar to what Hitler used with the Jews trying to bring down whatever German civilization. So you don't want to use that language, right? Okay, don't use that language. But but nonetheless, a lot of them do migrate to the United States, and they implement something which has been very influential in terms of sort of the intellectual history of the United States, and it's still huge and dominates in the universities and in academia. They implement something called critical theory in their writing, okay? And this is probably the most important element of what the Frankfurt School does, okay? So what is critical theory, right? Well, critical theory posits that every power structure, right, like a power structure could be like capitalism, or a power structure could be like monarchy or aristocracy, right? A power structure. So the power structure is the capitalists who rule through like representative government a lot of times, right? And they, you know, so if that's the power structure you're dealing with, there's always a myth, a story that promotes the power structure, that makes the power structure appealing, that tries to promote the value system that is useful to the power structure, right? So the critical theory is the idea that you want to expose and criticize the narrative that supports the power structure, right? You're going to use the study of literature, for instance, to figure out, well, what are some of the elements of the myth that supports capitalism that we can identify and expose for what they are and start to poke holes in, right? So you're using the humanities in order to challenge power structures. That's kind of the central idea of critical theory, right? And of course, from their perspective, there's not like something like a universal piece of literature that's just a great piece of literature. No. Literature is said to be great, they would claim, because it supports whatever the prevailing power structure is. So, for instance, one of the early examples of this critical theory was a critique of the Odyssey, saying that the Odyssey really promotes bourgeois values. And it's kind of like looking to, and it's like the domination of nature and things like this. Okay, well, you get the idea, right? Of course, so everything, right, like, but, you know, a lot of, so basically, no, this is wrong. I don't agree with this, right? Because, right, like, I do believe in a universal human nature. We can all get around a text and talk about what it means to be a human, because we're all human in some way. We can relate to it through what another human has written, or whatever. Okay, but they would reject that entirely, right? And that's still the predominant way in which a lot of scholarship is conducted within academia. And many of you are likely to run into this when you go to university next year, and you're going to be expected to kind of try to engage with texts in this way. So just be aware that that's what's happening. Okay, a lot of it's descended from the critical theory.